In this video, I'll explain why I think locations like this teach you very little about landscape photography. Now, I'm not saying for 1 minute that you shouldn't photograph the classic scenes. We all love photographing the classics, and I do, whenever I can, get out and shoot those big iconic scenes. But there are drawbacks to doing this for our photography. I know it isn't improving me. The problem with such iconic scenes is that very often they're easy to shoot. They're relatively straightforward. You can just roll up out of your car, point the camera, and it works. It's not difficult to compose. It's very easy to shoot. The problem is you'll have seen tens of thousands of images from the same location, many of them far better than you could ever hope to achieve. I mean, there are many locations throughout the world like this. I find it ridiculously easy in some locations to get good photographs without really making any effort for the composition. Now, the problem with going to these locations is so many people will have shot it before, and more than likely they'll have shot it in better light than you. There may be people who've revisited the location tens, hundreds of times, and they've optimised the shot. They know exactly the right time of year to go. You roll up, maybe it's sort of a once-in-a-lifetime trip, and you get the standard image. It's not going to be a world beater. It may well be a nice shot for your portfolio, but it isn't going to stand out amongst all those other shots of such a great location. And a difficulty with this is that you may find yourself becoming disheartened with your photography. You may find yourself unfairly comparing yourselves to these iconic shots taken with the best light by the best photographers. You may lose some interest in what you're doing. You may find it difficult to get the enthusiasm up to go out and shoot when you're comparing yourself to such excellence taken at the best locations in the world. Now, worse still, you may convince yourself that your equipment is amateur or second rate, and the reason these great photographers have got these images is because they had the right equipment. They had expensive cameras and lenses with many megapixels. They had the best tripod. They had the best post-processing software. All the paraphernalia that supports our hobby can become a bit of a burden. And without all that equipment, you can convince yourself that you're not going to get those iconic shots. So you may go and spend an awful lot of money unnecessarily. And sadly, again, with iconic locations, many of them aren't what they used to be. An awful lot of locations now will have restrictions on where you can place your camera, your tripod, how close you can get and the angles you may be able to shoot from. Those images you've seen in the past where the masters set up and took a particular image, things may well have changed. There may well have been changes in the landscape. Vegetation, trees disappear, branches fall off, water is rerouted. Waterfalls may not be as spectacular if we haven't got the rainfall anymore. So again, it's very difficult to emulate those classic shots from the past, and you just become downhearted and you may start to doubt your own photographic skills. Now, for me, the art of photography is arranging subjects within the frame that produce a pleasing image or an image that tells a story. You're trying to convey a message to the viewer through your photographs. And this skill takes time to master. It's not something you can just pick up overnight. It takes a long time to so-called get your eye in and see images that other people may pass by. Now, the iconic locations do not encourage you to develop your photographic eye and your skills. One person said to me once, you could turn up at an iconic location, fall over and still get a good shot. And in some cases that's true. I mean, I've been to a few locations where no matter where I pointed the camera, it looked like a good image to me. Now, that didn't make me take my time and care, didn't make me seek out images which may be a bit different, which may be a bit more challenging, not only for me as a photographer, but also as a viewer. So many photographers will take themselves to an ordinary location, something less dramatic or iconic, and they may well be lost. They don't know where to start. There is no obvious focal point. Where do I place my camera? There's no foreground interest. How am I going to make something out of this jumble, this forest or an open shoreline? There's absolutely nothing for me to latch my eye onto. The scene doesn't conform to the rule of thirds or the golden rule. How am I going to photograph it? I haven't got the usual aids to composition that I've seen in the past, and I haven't seen thousands of pictures to model my own on. So the danger there is that we now start to resort to tricks and techniques to make a photograph where one doesn't really exist. We may go to the extremes of focal lengths, a super wide angle lens or a super telephoto to isolate something and to stack up that perspective. We may also start to use techniques like long exposure, smoothing out the water and the skies, or using all sorts of effects filters and clever processing in Lightroom later on. But all these are just a crutch, really, to prop up something which isn't really there in the first place. And it hasn't, again, taught you anything about using your eye and your skill to define what the best composition is in a particular location. You've reached straight for the toolbox and bypassed the most important element of all. Now, I've been guilty of all of these in the past. I have purchased equipment unnecessarily. I have felt the need to use extremes of focal lengths to get the shot. But I've become dissatisfied with that approach over the years, and increasingly I find myself using a smaller and smaller array of equipment and visiting less iconic locations, with the goal being to see what other people may not see and to show that through my photography. So I'm saying we need to get out there and challenge ourselves to shoot things which are less iconic. Go to your local landscape, somewhere you can visit time and time again, where there are less restrictions on your time, where you can visit when the weather may be optimal. Now, it may not be full of other photographers because they see nothing there to shoot, but you will find things to shoot. You may find things in a smaller scope. You may find things at a macro level, much tighter compositions, cropping close in, using longer lenses potentially to cut out that extraneous detail. And at first it can be disheartening and you come back with maybe bland shots. But given time, you'll start to refine those views and you'll start to make much stronger images. And also, if you can, try to avoid the classic times of day, the sunrise and sunsets. Now, we're all guilty. I love sunrise. It's my favourite time of day to be out, mainly because nobody else is. But the light can be so stunning, it can take over an image. We all look at the light, we look at the clarity, we look at the colour, and we're not actually so focused on the composition. Again, a sunset or a sunrise can make a weak composition look like a decent shot. But ultimately, again, we're not learning anything from shooting sunrise and sunset and avoiding other times of the day when we could get unique images that nobody else ever sees. And the last thing about going out and shooting and being a bit different is you will develop your own style. It is almost inevitable that when you start going out and shooting things that other people don't see, that you will eventually produce images and a coherent look to your portfolio which stands out from other people. When you show people your images, they'll ask you, where is that? I've never seen that before. Or where did you find that? And you may explain that it was, just round the corner, or it was out on a local walk, or you just took a stroll midday with bright sun and you're able to capture some high contrast dynamic images, some abstract images. People will be more interested than your shots of the great vistas of this world, the lakes, the sea, the fantastic sunrises and sunsets. There is far more to photography than that. It has to be said, though, it is very difficult for us as humans to avoid peer pressure. Now, if you see Instagram images getting tens of thousands of likes and hits and comments, you naturally want that same respect. You want that same approval for your images, for your photography. You want to feel good about yourself. So it's very difficult for us to tear away from the norm, from the stereotype, and produce images which are our own, which may not get as many likes, which may not get any likes. People might say, I don't know where that is, and I don't like the way you shot it. I'm not interested. I can't see the scene. I don't know what you're pointing it at, so it's not my sort of shot. But it takes a brave person to stand out and say, this is what I want to shoot. And this is what we should be doing as photographers. We should be trying to develop our own style, trying to say something through our photography. And it doesn't matter what equipment we've got. It could be a camera phone, or it could be a £10,000 medium format digital camera. Providing you are saying something and you are strongly indicating to the viewer what it is you're trying to say, your images will succeed, I guarantee it. So in summary, enjoy shooting the iconic locations. I will certainly keep shooting them. There's no way I'm going to stop going out on those fantastic evenings and shooting the magnificent views, but I know they don't teach me anything about photography. I learn about my photography when I go out and I shoot the ordinary, and I try to make it extraordinary, or I make it subtle, I make it quiet. I want to show people what I see through my lens. It sounds a bit cliched, but that's the way I want it to be. So I hope you found this video useful, and I'll see you again soon. Thanks for watching.